The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, dedicated to creating access to financial well-being for local people, businesses, and communities. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar in Hatfield, specializing in solar installations, battery storage, and clean energy solutions tailored to the homes and businesses of Western Massachusetts. Northeast-solar.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Clee Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, environmental grief, human connection, and more come alive on stage at Chester Theater in the play Amchitka.
Plus, we get a tour of the brand new cornucopia after it's moved to Dwight Street in Holyoke.
But first, we missed talking to Congressman McGovern for a week.
So we've got a lot to catch up on where the government is concerned.
How was your break? Yeah, you were off last week.
Yeah, we went to Spain, and Portugal.
Oh,
it was nice.
I love them both.
We were in
That's
Spain
great.
when they won the World Cup, so that was fun. And then I got...
Oh, that must have been wild.
Yeah, then I got explosive diarrhea, but not the RFK Jr. kind. I got just a good old-fashioned stomach bug, so it really put a damper in our ability to eat the good food all over Spain and Portugal, so that was too bad.
Well, you feeling better?
I feel great now. But speaking of explosive diarrhea, let's get to Washington, D.C. It's time for our weekly check-in with U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts, the ranking member of the Rules Committee, Congressman Jim McGovern, in a segment we call McGoverning with McGovern. This week, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in Washington for the first time since the joint U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Many have said that Israel has long pressured several administrations to wage a war with Iran. The Trump administration was convinced to do so. The war, wildly unpopular with the American public. 18 U.S. service people have died. Countless Iranians have died. According to Politico, though, earlier in the conflict, Netanyahu and his aides were more prescriptive in their counsel to Trump, outlining a military plan that would see Iran's regime fall quickly. That has failed to bear out. The Israelis know that Trump is in charge now, so they're being cautious about not being perceived as making demands. Are you hearing anything new about an endgame in sight?
All I'm hearing is that Trump is deeply frustrated that this war is not winding down. In fact, it's expanding, and it's been terribly costly. You mentioned the cost to our service members, but in terms of money, notwithstanding Pete Hegseth trying to lowball it, the estimates are that it's been over $100 billion. That's $100 billion bombing elementary schools in Iran and not investing in building elementary schools here in the United States. There's no military victory to be had here. And as we speak, there are militia groups in various countries in the Middle East that are kind of joining in Iran's cause. And now we're told that China is providing military aid to Iran via Pakistan. So the president needs to admit that he made a mistake here, and he needs to find a way to end it.
Yeah, that's the recent reporting I've seen from Reuters. China entering the fray. Iran expected to receive within weeks a shipment of 400 Chinese-made shoulder-fired air defense missile launchers. Does this complicate this in a way that we are now potentially at the cusp of what someday we may call World War III?
I mean, I think, one of the problems when you get into a war, even when you admit that it was a mistake, ego and pride and all the wrong influences play a role in you not wanting to do the right thing. And the right thing is bringing this to an end. This is expanding. This is becoming more costly. This is getting us nowhere. If you ever get involved in a war, you ought to have a clearly defined mission, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this president had no idea what he was doing. There's a reason why other presidents haven't gone down this road, because it's a quagmire. And that's where we find ourselves right now. And it's unfortunate, but the president has to swallow his pride and admit he's wrong and just bring this to an end.
In other war news, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, was in Washington, D.C. this week as well for the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham. Benjamin Netanyahu was there as well. It looks like they had some sort of heated exchange at the funeral, but I think maybe in honor of Senator Lindsey Graham's work, there is a Russia sanctions bill that is set to pass the Senate. Zelensky seems eager to see these sanctions against Russia passed, but the House is out until September. Is anything going to get done, or are we, as the U.S. government, like a pair of scissors with only one side?
I have long believed that Putin is a bad guy and is doing bad things all around the world, including to his own people. And I do believe that the sanctions bill, although there are some aspects of the Senate bill that I think may be problematic. But nonetheless, the issue is that the House is in recess, and if the president doesn't want this bill, the House Speaker will not schedule it for a vote. I've also urged, our leadership to put pressure on the Republican leadership in the House that if Trump tries to expand this war in Iran during these next few weeks, which he may very well do, we ought to call on the Speaker to bring us back to an emergency session. And we ought to do the oversight, we ought to have a debate, and we ought to vote whether to authorize an expansion of the war or not. Everybody ought to be there. The Speaker of the House needs to stand up to this president, reclaim congressional authority and prerogatives, and he needs to stop being a coward.
Speaking with U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern, McGoverning with McGovern, there has been some scuttlebutt about the International Criminal Court this week. The U.S. has not signed on to be party to this International Criminal Court, although in other times it seems that we have been supportive of the work that they do. The State Department tweeted out, the U.S. welcomes the decision by interim president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, and Venezuela to withdraw from the ICC and the new Venezuelan government's partnership on American-led efforts to dismantle the corrupt and worthless ICC. The U.S. has pressured 5 nations, including our new colony of Venezuela, to withdraw. This court has also issued warrants for arrest for Benjamin Netanyahu, which New York City Mayor Mamdani has said he would have tried to carry out if he didn't think it was a federal issue rather than a citywide issue. Is the International Criminal Court a valuable tool, or is it worthless, as the State Department says?
I think it is a valuable tool. I think international law in general is a valuable tool. We have international laws governing human rights. I think that's a valuable tool. The fact of the matter is, the reason why the president wants to opt out of the ICC is because we're right now committing war crimes ourselves, and he doesn't want to be held accountable. Rubio doesn't want to be held accountable. Hegseth doesn't want to be held accountable. But it is kind of curious that Venezuela opted out. Look what's happened. I mean, he went in and he kidnapped Maduro. He took over the oil production in Venezuela. All that revenue comes to the U.S. Treasury first. None of it gets to the people of Venezuela. He installed basically a Maduro clone with Delcy Rodriguez as president. The Venezuelan people have no expanded freedoms. There are more political prisoners than ever. The economy stinks. And I guess the price she has to pay to stay in power is to opt out of the International Criminal Court. It really is sad, especially for the Venezuelan people.
There was drama on the Hill yesterday when the former chief medical advisor, is what they call it, to the president of the United States, Anthony Fauci, took the Hill at the behest of Senator Rand Paul, trying to question Anthony Fauci about his role at the beginning of COVID, whether there was a cover-up, about a gain of function in a lab in China. Anthony Fauci pled the Fifth repeatedly yesterday. Do you think Fauci should have answered questions? Does it leave the American public more confused when he pleads the Fifth like this, especially given that President Biden preemptively pardoned Fauci before he left office?
Look, I wish there was an open discussion yesterday. Unfortunately, when the chairman of the Senate committee, Rand Paul, is basically saying and vowing he wants to put Anthony Fauci in jail, without any basis to do that, I think you end up with what you ended up yesterday, him pleading the Fifth. But we need to have a discussion about what went right and what went wrong during COVID. And we need to get rid of the conspiracy theories and all the other crap that's being spun out there, and figure out how best we proceed in the future, because there will be future pandemics. We ought to talk about the fact that Donald Trump, and this is on tape as well, I wish that would have come out yesterday, with Bob Woodward basically saying that he knew that COVID-19 was dangerous and it would kill people, but he downplayed it purposefully because he didn't want to negatively impact the Dow Jones. We ought to talk about that as well. One of the things I'm getting very worried about is that people are not going to want to go into medical research, given the charade and the show we saw yesterday. And we need people to do medical research because we have no idea what's going to hit us in the future. And then the second thing is we got to stop these conspiracy theories. We've seen a measles outbreak in this country because people aren't getting vaccinated. And they're not getting vaccinated because RFK Jr. and everybody else are spinning all these lies about the measles vaccine. vaccine. Well, you know what? If this continues to grow, then even people who are vaccinated will be in danger. So we got to stop the nonsense, and we got to have candid and honest conversations. Nobody's perfect. Fauci's not perfect. The way we handled COVID wasn't perfect, but there was a lot about what we did that was appropriate, and we had to put everything into the proper context.
Speaking with U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern, McGoverning with McGovern, we talk a lot about agricultural issues on this show and with you. You have co-sponsored a bill reining in seed monopolies, the Fair Seeds for Farmers Act. What does this bill do? What would it mean for our local farmers, and does it have any chance of passing?
Yeah, well, I think it does have a chance of passing if we can take control of the House, because big corporations have taken over everything, including they have a monopoly on seeds. The seeds are more expensive. They can control the price. If a farmer comes up with a variation on a particular seed, then the corporation owns the patent. I mean, it's a big mess. And the deal is we got to break it up. We ought not to empower a handful of corporations to decide what our agricultural policy should be. But I do believe that there is potentially bipartisan support on this. And if we can win the House, I can guarantee you, because I'm on the Agriculture Committee, we will get a hearing and we'll bring it to the floor.
We've got a handful of listener questions for you, Congressman. This one says, "Hi, Monty and Khalees. At the next opportunity, can you thank Jim for being such a warrior, but then get his thoughts on why the DNC chair, Ken Martin, is missing in action while the RNC chair, Joe Gruters, is out making waves in the media? With less than 4 months until the midterms, I think it's less than 100 days at this point, the Democratic Party leadership should be hammering Republicans at every turn for their blind allegiance to convicted felon, adjudicated rapist, and for continuing to protect Epstein co-conspirators while allowing ICE to murder civilians on our streets." Then he adds, "Thanks for all you do." That's Matt from Belchertown. What's your take on the DNC chair, Ken Martin, who also, according to the New York Times, has been increasingly anxious about losing his job, threw a phone at an aide's desk earlier this month in frustration? What's your take on Ken Martin?
Well, I think there's a great deal of frustration with him and the DNC. I mean, the DNC is really not part of the effort to take back the Congress and protect our democracy. They're broke. I don't know how they got into this position to begin with. I don't know if it makes a difference if he's ousted now or not. I mean, it's kind of late in the game. But the bottom line is we need to do a top-to-bottom review of the DNC, because right now it's useless. And there is so much at stake. And it really is frightening to know that they're broke.
Any thoughts on why the DNC is broke?
I don't know, but I think it's clearly inappropriate and mismanagement, in my opinion. The idea that at a time when so many people are frightened of the current administration and the Republican control of Congress, it would seem to me that this is a perfect time to be able to raise the funds and help develop a strategy that will not only win back the House and the Senate, but also help us win governor's races and state legislative races at every level. And he says he's going out there and speaking, but to be honest with you, Ken Martin giving a speech is not as good as the DNC providing financial support to these individual races.
Got a listener question from Julie. She writes, "Hello, Fabulous 413. While I realize censuring does not have teeth, would members of Congress consider censuring Stephen Miller? Why or why not? He's creating a dangerous false image of the majority of citizens and sowing/perpetuating extreme division." That's Julie from Hampshire County.
Well, I certainly would vote for that. I think he's a dangerous individual and responsible for a lot of the excesses and worst policies of this administration. The problem we have is we don't have the ability to bring anything to the floor. We don't have the ability to call a hearing because we're not in charge. I mean, that's why these midterm elections are so important. And I think so much is at stake. I got to be honest with you. I really fear that if we can't win back, either the House and or the Senate or both, to be able to slow these people down to be a check, I'm not sure we're going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle in 2028. What is happening in this country is very reminiscent of 1930s Germany. You got a president who prosecutes his opponents and members of the free press. You have a Republican Party that goes along with that says it's okay to overturn a free and fair election. It's okay to pardon people who attack the Capitol, who beat up cops. It's okay to have masked agents in the street arresting and killing American citizens. I mean, I go on and on and on. This election, I think, is more important than a lot of people realize. And I want our leadership, at every level to be making that point. I mean, our democracy is at stake.
Which leads to less of a listener question. Our friend Carl Meyer, environmental journalist from Greenfield, loves to actually just send statements rather than anything that you could answer. But he says, "Dear Congressman, please stop repeating your fears that Trump will use ICE, the National Guard, and his assortment of Proud Boys and thugs to steal the upcoming election, unless you can state your plan to stop this. Otherwise, you are doing Trump's dirty work of spreading fear for him. That's not leadership," says Carl Meyer. "Voting rights are brazenly under attack. We need action now. What's called for is to stop all the marching in place." Carl Meyer has said this several times through this show and elsewhere. "Holding a September People's March for the vote on the National Mall, everyone everywhere all at once defending democracy and shouting down this treasonous bully president and his Supreme Court, saying in one voice, 'This shall not stand.' Carl says it needs to happen now, not wait like sheep to see what happens on a single day in November." What's your take on that?
Well, I have a feeling that if I didn't point this out now and it happened, Carl would be mad at me. Why I didn't raise the issue that they might use ICE? Look, I've been raising the issue because I want people to be aware of it. I don't want people to be fearful to go to the voting booths. But I also, I've been talking to the governor and our state leaders about what is the strategy here in Massachusetts. And I think they're developing a plan to make sure that everybody in Massachusetts, at least, has the ability to cast their vote, without intimidation. I'm happy about a march on Washington. I've been involved in a gazillion marches in Washington since this president got reelected to a second term. That in and of itself is not enough. We have to win, and we have to turn out, and, we have to get out of this circular firing squad where we're not good enough or we're not doing enough or whatever. Everybody can do something. But, in terms of elections, the state has the primary responsibility of ensuring that the elections in that particular state go without a hitch. And we have been working with the governor, who will be outlining how the state is going to respond to any intimidation by the federal government.
U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern, what's giving you hope this week?
Well, I was at this event yesterday in Greenfield. We had a ribbon cutting for a new shelter for people who are homeless, together with some clinical support structures, and there are apartments for people who are trying to transition out of homelessness. This is sponsored by this group, CSO. What gives me hope is that in that room were dozens and dozens and dozens of people who are doing great work in this community. Who are caring about some of the most vulnerable members of our community. I hope that what they're doing is contagious and more of us get involved in doing good deeds in the coming weeks and months.
U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts joins us every Thursday. You can send your questions or comments to thefab413@nepm.org, and I'll be sure to ask them. Thanks so much, Congressman.
All the best. Thanks.
Some of those concerns that Jim McGovern was mentioning, there's a new play in Chester that approaches them as well, called Amchitka, and we'll speak with its playwright, Mark St. Germain, and managing director of Chester Theater, Hannah Williams.
After we celebrate the reopening of a beloved natural foods market and its move to Holyoke.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by CISA, community involved in sustaining agriculture, offering a searchable online guide to local food and farms. More information at buylocalfood.org. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Visiting Angels West Springfield, providing home care for seniors and veterans in Hampden County, including Pocket RN, a virtual Medicare-approved dementia care program. visitingangels.com/West Springfield.
We're standing inside the brand new cornucopia in Holyoke. Cornucopia, for those who have lived in the valley for any length of time, it may be an iconic name. It was situated in Thorns Marketplace, right in the heart of downtown Northampton. It was founded by Bud Stockwell as one of the, if not the first, sort of natural food and wellness stores in our area, predating Whole Foods, predating when Whole Foods was bread and circus. Cornucopia was where you went for natural, where you went for the supplements, where you walk in and are bombarded by the scents of bulk spices and patchouli. And guess what? New Cornucopia has it already, even though you just opened over the past weekend.
We nailed it. We got the smell down. We made it happen. We were very pleased to hear that. Everybody's like, that smell when they come in. We're like, yes.
It was literally the first thing I said when I walked in. Well, it smells like Cornucopia in here. And we are with the owners of Cornucopia, Nate Clifford and Jade Jump. First of all, married couple.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We make it work. We communicate well and we argue constructively.
Find it in the store and then you don't have to take it home.
2019 was it when you took over from Bud?
That's right, yep. March of 2019.
Oof.
And then exactly a year later, we shut down. But then we immediately pivoted and started offering curbside and delivery. And we maintained our customer base, and we were just really grateful to be able to keep it going for as long as we were there.
But we did learn what the store is to the community and what we really needed to be focused on. So it was a good thing ultimately for what we bring to the store now, I think.
Before we get into the transition from Northampton to Holyoke, tell us a little bit about your backstory in the natural food world.
So I had a sort of a chip on my shoulder having been asked to leave my high school, and so I went and got a GED instead, and I was had no idea where I was going, and I was sort of blowing in the wind, and I ended up in AmeriCorps NCCC, which is a great program, 10-month program. And in that, I kind of learned to love myself a little more and to sort of believe in myself a little more. So when I came back, I was looking for a place to work that was a little more like-minded, which at the time was Wild Oats, which if anybody remembers that. And then Wild Oats got bought by Whole Foods. And when I first started at Whole Foods, I was like, I'm working here for life. This is the greatest thing. I can't believe how wonderful this is. And over time, I kind of moved up the ranks and I learned what corporations are and how they function, and it got a little gross. So then I started.
And this is even pre-Bezos, right?
This is pre-Bezos. Yeah. I was the OG of getting the heck out of there. At that time, around that time that I left that, I started met Jade, and we got it together as a couple, and that was so good so quickly. And she helped me find a job at an independent store, which was called Cambridge Naturals in Porter Square. There again, I had someone there who was a mentor who really supported me and made me feel like I was intelligent and able to function. I can do hard things. So, I was helping to run the store, doing a lot of buying, learning about the retail world, learning about sort of a nauseating concept, but conscious capitalism, just capitalism kind of sucks. But yes, we do try to put people before profits and then also profit enough to survive. And I learned that through Cambridge Naturals. We got pregnant. We didn't want to be in a studio apartment in Somerville, so we moved out here and started working almost immediately for Cornucopia Market with Bud. And then pretty quickly it was clear that Bud would sell to the right person, and we worked through that process, which took a while and quite a journey, but I've been now doing it for 25 years, so it's painful, but I love this thing. I love this thing we call retail.
Jade, tell us your story.
Yeah, sure. So I was also working in a more corporate environment for a consulting firm. I was doing graphic design, and then I found yoga. I left my corporate job to teach yoga. I had been a vegetarian for about 4 years at that point, and so I started shopping at Whole Foods. I met Nate before that, though. We did not meet at Whole Foods. That was not our love story. Yeah, and so, we were living together. I was shopping at Whole Foods while he was working there a lot, and then, like he said, we found the job at Cambridge Naturals. I ended up also getting a job at Cambridge Naturals, so we were working there together, and soon after that, we were really inspired by what they were doing there. So we would spend our weekends going to the library, looking at books and writing a business plan, and it kind of the dream started back then, and then when we found out that Cornucopia was looking to sell, it felt like a match made in heaven.
We were invited to dinner with Bud and Sydney Flum-Stockwell early on after having worked there, and on the way to the dinner we were like, what if they say, are you interested in buying the business? And then they did, and we were like, oh my God.
At least you had a conversation about it beforehand, and instead that could have been awkward.
We were somewhat mentally prepared for that, but it's quite a journey figuring out how to buy a business when you don't have any money.
Yeah.
But we got there.
Talk about, Jade, the jump from Northampton to Holyoke, and be as diplomatic or non-diplomatic as you'd like to about why you left this iconic business location, a mall for all intents and purposes, in downtown Northampton, Thorns Marketplace, and why you're now in Holyoke next to Fame, next to Blue Door Gathering, where we just had Laura on the show earlier this week, next to the cannabis dispensary, to add to the smell.
Yeah, so, like I said, once we closed down in 2020, we were able to keep our curbside and delivery open, and then once Thorns finally did reopen, we were never able to regain the foot traffic that we had prior. People moved a lot of their shopping online, and then Bezos...
Ironically, Amazon and Whole Foods probably, yeah.
Exactly.
They really capitalized on that moment. They were uniquely situated to really take over, and now we have things you can order on Amazon that show up by the evening. So it's an incredibly hard thing to compete against. So as Jade said, it was really hard to get the foot traffic back. That in conjunction with the fact that Northampton's just an expensive place to be. We love Northampton. There's so much wonderful things about Northampton. We miss being downtown all the time, but it is a very different mentality mentality in working with the landlords in Northampton versus working with the landlords in Holyoke? I've thought a lot about this question and how I wanted to answer it. I have every desire to be diplomatic. The reality is I totally understand the position of the landlord that we were working with in Northampton. It wasn't affordable for us to stay there, not just because of what we were paying to physically be in this space, but also the utilities and the overhead were so much higher as well. Also, Holyoke, where we are, is a food desert. The reputation that Holyoke has, or at least that some people hold on to in their minds, is not fair or legitimate. We certainly have had nothing but a wonderful time being in Holyoke, but there is not access to this kind of food here. So the opportunity to leave Thorns was a very hard decision to make, but once we made it and then we found this space, we were like, all right, this really meets our personal mission for our store and how we want to serve a community. We were a little bit of in a diluted market there. So here, just 20 minutes down the road, we're able to serve a community that really didn't have access to this stuff. And there are a lot of people moving to this area. There's a ton of apartments being built. So we feel, and I'm sure people who have lived here for a long time have heard things like this before, but we feel like this is actually the moment when Holyoke rises, and we feel like we've caught it at a very good time. So we're thrilled to be here. This is more our speed, frankly. This is more the community that meets what we were hoping to do with this business in general. So it was hard, and it is hard, but we're so thrilled with the first few days.
We're with Nate Clifford and Jade Jump at the brand new Cornucopia in Holyoke, having made the transition from Northampton here to Holyoke with its grand opening just this past weekend.
I mean, the inside of this space doesn't actually look that different from the space that you had in Thorns. But have you found like some of your older customers making the drive down below the tofu curtain?
Our older customers are just our bread and butter. They have shown up in a humbling amount. I mean, they came in droves. When we first Saturday, when we came out and we brought the flag out and we were putting it in, every car in the parking lot, the doors just opened, and it was just all these customers that were just waiting for over a year for us to reopen. We both just broke down crying. I mean, it was incredible. So we are making sure that this store meets the expectations of the people who have shopped with us for now 46 years. And also, we're making sure that when someone from this immediate community walks in, they see and feel like this store is also for them. Yeah, people are making the trip. I call it Northampton expat. There's this whole influx of
Call them
people.
immigrants, expats.
Yeah.
People, white people, love to go to other countries and call themselves expats.
Yeah, okay.
You're an
fair,
immigrant, dude.
Fair. I love that. That's so true. But they're coming, so they maybe bought a house in the 70s in Northampton, and then it went way up in value, and their tax and everything went way up, and they weren't really able to retire as comfortably as they wanted to. They sold their house in Northampton, came and bought a really nice spot in Holyoke, and now they're all here, just thrilled that we're here. They don't have to drive to Northampton anymore. So there's that conversation happening too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've seen a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces, a lot of people, like Nate said, traveling from Northampton. We were also getting a lot of customers traveling from Holyoke to Northampton, especially that last year. So now that we're here, they're like, yeah, I can walk here. Or we have people that live in Holyoke that worked in Northampton that are like, oh, well, now I can just come here after work. So it's been a great mixture of people from Northampton and Holyoke.
You're so right. We were seeing that demographic shift before we made the decision to leave, where we had the Springfield, West Springfield, Ludlow, Chicopee, people making the trip for the herbal medicine stuff anyway. Our bulk herbs and spices are incredibly popular for anybody who's trying to do their own sort of healing, and if they have that herbal knowledge, they can come here and just get a little of what they need. And so that's something we really are trying to specialize in and be available for, because there's not a lot of places you can get that stuff.
How hard was it to get this particular space ready to open?
We were so naive. I'm just going to be clear. I wish I didn't have to use that word. But the reality is we walked in here, we were like, it's perfect. And it was. I mean, it's awesome. It was dusty and it needed paint. I needed everything that we did to it. But then it's like you're working with the city to actually go. The last thing this place was an artist collective. And on occasion, they would invite the public in to do some shopping. But it was not a retail store. So when you go and you say, we're going to do retail, we need to change the zoning. And then you need to make sure that all of the sprinkler heads are the right kind of sprinkler heads and that they're covering what you need them to cover. You need to make sure that your exits are the right kind of egress for the right occupancy rate. You got to make sure that your hot water is not just hot, but a specific kind of hot. You know, the floors need to be sealed. And what kind of paints do you use in what different areas? When we moved into this space, it didn't have HVAC, but then HVAC comes along with all these other permits. The licensing and permitting process, regardless regardless of how, and this is true, every time we walked into City Hall, I mean, we were like walking through a praise chorus. I mean, people were so psyched that we're here. City Hall has been fantastic to us. And even that being true, it is so hard to get an answer that is really actionable because you're dealing with different people all the time. They're very busy. Nobody's making a lot of money up at City Hall. So it is just a slog. If you didn't start with a huge amount of funding, you can't pay somebody to work through these things for you. And if you've never done it before, it is a process. That's hence the year and a month that it took to open. I mean, it got a little dire there towards the end, but opening was an incredibly wonderful thing. We had such a big day on Saturday, and just Jade and I just looking at each other like, okay, we're gonna be okay. I mean, it was scary.
Holyoke, where Cornucopia is now, has a very different demographic than Northampton does. Khalees used the phrase tofu curtain. Cornucopia was probably part of the reason that tofu is used in the name tofu curtain to begin with. Holyoke is at least 50% Latine. There's a lot of Irish folks here. Talk about what Cornucopia will do to reach out to that Latine population, and are you afraid about gentrification when it comes to bringing a hippie store like Cornucopia to a place that is not known for that necessarily?
So when I first moved to Massachusetts, I moved to North Andover, Massachusetts. And right across the bridge from North Andover is Lawrence. And everybody that I found that I actually resonated with and that I actually felt like a real, genuine, authentic person was in Lawrence. And they were all, Spanish as a first language kids who were so cool and interesting and, again, just genuine. So now that we're out here and we're in Holyoke, and I'm like, guys, because they're all still my friends, and we're on a big text chain together. I'm like, we're going to Holyoke. I'm going to need your help, making sure that, how do I communicate? The number one thing that we're being told is you got to physically put out posters and flyers. You need to go and get to people that way. You have to put it in Spanish language, but not just, my buddies are so, like, dude, if you just use Google Translate, they're gonna know exactly the skin tone and the appearance that you have. Then I go to my buddy and I'm like, make it Puerto Rican Spanish. He goes and he's like, all right, say it this way. And then we put it on the posters and we put them around and go to the YMCA and the health center and the senior center, and we make sure the library, we make sure people are seeing that stuff. And then also really opening a dialogue. So when people come in that have never walked in here before, opening a dialogue and being like, what you see now is yours to change. Talk to us about what you want to see on our shelves. We're going to stay within our sourcing ideals, but if you have a specific type of item you want to see in here that is Puerto Rican cuisine or Irish cuisine or everything in between, we want that to be here as well. So that's what I meant when I'm saying trying to strike that balance. We're not going to be able to 100% avoid that, the gentrification comment. The best way to avoid it in my mind, in our mind, is to just get here, get grounded, and be consistent and make sure that we stay for a good long time. I think that will over time help to avoid some of that, but there's going to be people who make that comment, and we are going to accept that instead of push back. I mean, it is what it is.
I guess our idea of a store would always be to like serve the community, all communities, of all types of people. I mean, one thing that we've been told is that we need to carry the ingredients for sofrito over and over. So we have done our best to carry the right spices. We still need to build a prep kitchen in order to have certain herbs and vegetables in the store. So that is part of our mission. We also need to learn Puerto Rican Spanish. So that's something that we have devoted ourselves to.
We need to hire a couple of people. We would really love to hire some Spanish speakers. We have some people who sort of speak Spanish. We would really like to be able to communicate with everybody that walks in here in an easy and comfortable way. And I did want to, Jay just sort of mentioned it, but we did have to do this in phases. This is phase 1. Phase 2 is, which will show you the back end, but we're going to build a kitchen. We're going to build a janitorial closet. It's going to be this whole other side of this project. And along with that comes the fresh produce, the loose produce, and being able to continue to work with the local farms and that local part of our economy. But we can't do that right away because we ran out of money. We had to get open. I mean, That's just the facts. We have to make that happen. We're going to make that happen. We are Cornucopia. We carry fresh produce. And so we're working towards that. But yeah.
You want to show us around a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the new bells and whistles of the new Cornucopia just reopened in Holyoke.
It has a similar look and feel, but really our whole thing was to make sure that if you are in a wheelchair or some other mobility device, that you can get in here, move around, feel like you have some elbow room and that you're not in anybody's way. That was definitely our biggest complaint at the other space, was that it was too crammed and too high up, and it sort of felt cavernous, and then it just wasn't as welcoming for someone in some sort of mobility device. So you can see it's a much more laid out space. You can also see that there's a lot of open space. So we are filling the gaps as we go. You see our big popular bulk area is about half full. We're working through it. We did the math on just like buying everything we needed to fill this, and it was a really big number. So we're having to buy that sort of in chunks as we go to make sure that we don't get ourselves in underwater, as they say. But we also specialize in vegan, really good at functional drinks, really good at teas and herbs and spices. And yeah, we're very proud of the vegan section. We make it easy to eat plant-based here. But as I said, you want to see the back room. I mean, you kind of checked it out in here. The back room is pretty neat.
How good is the banana milk?
I'm
Curious.
not a fan.
You're not a fan.
I mean, I'm just like, it's unnecessary, personally.
Bananas don't even have nipples.
Well, neither do oats or like hazelnuts or almonds, so.
You hear the loud HVAC here happening, but so back here is that other 3,000 square feet. Over here, we're starting to clear this out, but this will be where the kitchen is. You have our 8x8 walk-in in pieces. It's part of that whole fire suppression thing. You have to move the sprinkler X amount of inches over. Everything costs quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
When we first got in here, we're like, we'll never use all this space. And then once we started really working into it, it was like,
Oh, do we have enough space?
it was like, oh, we just have what we need for space. So we actually were courting people to kind of come and sublet back here, but it just, we were like, yeah, no, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
When
It's a
you,
huge amount of space. It's great.
Yeah.
when you get the kitchen, is it going to be primarily prep and prepared foods for you, or are you planning to also do classes?
We would love to offer, so I have a grant out there that's, if we get the grant, we will be building a more robust kitchen than we currently have planned. The grant, it's 50-50 that we would get that, but that would be a chunk of money in where we could do a full kitchen where we could really do trainings and things like that. That being said, it's going to be basically just a prep kitchen in order to be able to properly handle and take care of the veggies. We have every intention to do not just like trainings around herbal medicine and stuff like that, but once we get into creating more and more relationships locally, we hopefully will have chefs in. And there's a wonderful, his name is Alex Torres. He is, everybody sort of knows him. He's at HCC, he's a chef, he works at Fame. People like that are just so personable and really knowledgeable, and to have somebody like that coming in and doing some different classes and trainings would be a lovely thing to do down the line, definitely.
Like dinners and classes and
Yeah, they
things
have a
too.
great culinary program.
Shout out to them. They've been so supportive. Shout out to the Lighthouse and De La Luz Soundstage, and just that we have had so much support. Shout out to Canna Provisions. Shout out to Fame. I mean, Canna Provisions is just, they were like, hey, somebody buys something from us, they bring their receipt over, give them a discount, do the same, and we're like, easy peasy, done. So now you shop with us, you get 10% off over at Canna Provisions. You can just get your cannabis and your healthy foods, go home and snack.
Healthy munchies.
Yeah.
Here at Cornucopia.
Yeah, I mean, like, why not?
I know. Better than the Takis that I would usually eat.
Symbiotic flow there, but yeah.
It's so weird to ask this now that we're looking at your old space, but at your new space, but like, where in the old space was your kitchen? Like, it was like behind the tea, but it was super, super cramped.
That was our little prep kitchen. Yeah, it was grandfathered in. It needed some love. And so, yeah, we were lucky that we were able to use it for as long as we were, but we need stainless steel surfaces.
Yes, it's safe to say the health department was flexible with us in that space.
Cool.
Yeah. You want to see the basement? I'm just kidding. It's a basement. We do have.
Only if Pee-wee's bike is in there.
We do have a basement. I have dreams of making a space for my dad cover band that doesn't exist, but I want to do that.
I'll be your drummer.
Yes, please.
What kind of covers are you going to play?
Well, so our daughter goes to Hilltown Community Cooperative Charter School. I think that's how they word it. And so I was in the Hilltown band for all last year, which was like, we perform at the end of every week and we do some kind of pop songs. It was everything from like Taylor Swift to Bill Withers to Stevie Wonder so it was just a lot of fun, and I miss it really bad is what I'm getting at. I want to be in that band again.
You've been busy.
Hopefully they'll have me back. We have been very busy.
Can you talk about how online sales are still figuring into what Cornucopia is doing in their new space?
Yeah,
because some people might think like, oh, you have a brick and mortar store. You're not really doing a whole lot of that anymore.
Yeah, we still have all of our inventory on our online store. We were working with DoorDash previously, but we just want to deliver it ourselves because we ended up doing that a lot anyways. So people can still purchase things from our online store. I think the way it's getting set up is that it's sort of like populating as things are getting purchased so that you can see the more like popular items that we carry. But it's there. Use it. We'll deliver to you ourselves.
Unfortunately or fortunately, you have to have that presence online to be able to serve people who are looking to shop online. Otherwise, they'll just probably get it somewhere else. So we do have that option. It is another time suck, but it is great. And it's we have a nice online presence. We don't have a lot of business on there now, but as we get rolling, we expect to, for sure. It's just part of the deal nowadays. You got to have one.
Late stage capitalism.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I'm not a political person. Just kidding. If you follow us,
You run a natural store and you're not a political person.
I have no
It's really just about the community. And
on our Instagram, I had to find a balance with talking about political things and actually also talking about the store. And I had backed way off. And then this last few days, people come in and they're like, "You got to still talk about the politics, man. You got to say it." So I do. But yeah, we are actually very welcoming to all, unless you are just being nasty.
There is a rich history in this valley of business owners being very political. Nick Seaman over at Black Sheep Deli doesn't pull any punches.
No.
Bud was,
fact,
would weigh in himself too.
Still hosts a community political talk in the Black Sheep on mornings sometimes.
Yeah, well, we posted some stuff over the summer, and we had a comment saying, "Keep the politics out of it. You're just a business." And it's like, everything's political.
Yeah.
How can you keep the politics out of it, especially right now? Like, you can't.
It's more important than ever. It's really important to us to be very clear about where we're at. Again, anybody can show up and shop with us, and we'll be super pleasant and give you the same attention we would anybody else. But if we have to draw the line somewhere, and these are not the times to kind of act like there aren't issues.
Well, congratulations to you two. It's been a long time coming. I've been following the story through Nate and Jade's saga, both on email and social media, since you left Thorns over a year ago. But congratulations now that this place is finally up and running, Cornucopia and Holyoke.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys coming in to see the space and just giving us this time to talk about it.
Yeah, you can come get your groceries and then go next door to Fame and get yourself a cocktail to congratulate yourself for buying your groceries like you were supposed to.
Or go on the other side and get yourself some cannabis.
My final shout out would just be to our kids and my mother and our family in general. Our kids sometimes we forget how much our stuff is transferring over to them. They have been incredible. They have been our biggest cheerleaders. My mom is just on a whim's notice going to pick them up and stuff. And all of that, sort of just the support of the community, the support of our staff. We have 4 people that just waited a year to work for us. It's incredibly humbling and flattering that they would be like, "We want to work for you because of what you're doing." So all of that, just really thankful and grateful for those folks in our lives.
And now we head to the Gem of the Valley to learn about a new play being premiered at Chester Theater that looks at the way we take care of ourselves, each other, the planet, and more as we hear about Amchitka.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. In a monitoring station at Amchitka, a volcanic island 170 miles off the coast of Alaska used for underground nuclear testing in the 1960s, 3 scientists find themselves cut off from the outside world as an event seems to be underway. But what?
This is the core of a new philosophical thriller by Mark St. Germain, author of Magdalene and Freud's Last Session. Amchitka is a brand new play that is the current production of Chester Theater.
And with us to talk about this production and others in the Chester Theater season are the playwright of Amchitka, Mark St. Germain, and managing director of the Chester Theater, Hannah Williams.
Mark St. Germain has written the plays Freud's Last Session, Camping with Henry and Tom, Forgiving Typhoid Mary, and Becoming Dr. Ruth. His previous work at Chester Theater, Magdalene, also performed at the Contemporary American Theater Festival. The Happiest Man on Earth was recently produced in Sydney, London, and Denver, and will be seen in New York City later this year. He's also got a number of screenwriting credits for both film and TV, including Dick Wolf's Crime and Punishment, CBS's As the World Turns, and the film adaptation of Freud's Last Session.
Hannah Williams, the managing director of Chester, is an arts administrator, producer, director, and intimacy choreographer who's worked with theaters across the U.S., Canada, and China. Originally from East Tennessee, Hannah's contributed to the production of new play festivals and a bevy of new plays, contributing directly to the development process and co-producing works with partners such as Oregon Shakespeare Festival, Raleigh Little Theater, and many others. And her time in North Carolina connected her to work in disability justice, including being chair of the Disability Inclusion Committee at Southeastern Theater Conference. This play, Amchitka, is running now through August 8th at Chester Town Hall in the little town of Chester, Massachusetts, the Gem of the Valley, as they like to call themselves, and the wonderful gem of a theater there, the Chester Theater. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
We should disclose that the only person in this conversation who's not seen this play is Monty Belmonte.
Yes, and I'm sure Mark has seen it a bazillion times as you wrote it, and I'm sure Hannah, being there while it's being produced, have also seen it many, many times. And Khalees just got to see it this weekend.
Indeed.
So I'll let you lead the charge with the first question there. Khalees, I know you're loaded with questions from having seen it.
I did, and it's one of the things I thought was really cool is that there was a talkback. It seems like there's a talkback after almost every show. But Mark, where did the idea for this piece come from?
It started at just chance reading about Amchitka Island, and it's off the coast of Alaska. It was used for nuclear testing, and they dug a tunnel down a mile to test nuclear weapons. And right now it's pretty much abandoned because of the radioactivity. So it just struck me as an interesting place to put a thriller, and that's where this is placed.
One of the things I got to learn, though, about Amchitka is that it's kind of the start where Greenpeace got started.
So once there's a huge
it's wonderful that something good came out of it. Yeah.
We just had Jane Atkinson on earlier this week talking about Free Willy and how that led to the movement to try to release orcas across the nation and the globe. So these, important things that bad things happen and then good things can come out of them.
Yeah. And it's ironic that right now it's a wildlife sanctuary, considering the amount of wildlife they killed during the nuclear tests.
Who were conducting the nuclear test? I'm assuming it was the United States, right? As opposed to Russia, but it's like you can see Russia from your door or whatever Sarah Palin said?
Yeah, Russia's not that far away. And I think it's one of the reasons they conducted the tests, probably psychological intimidation there. And to do that, they had to evict and they had to get off the island, everybody. The Aleut tribe had been there for 1,000 years. And they had to relocate them all in, I think, North Alaska in camps there. So it was very disturbing. But the play is not so much about the island, it's about what happens on the island. And the premise of it is that we have 3 scientists who had gone to do tests on the island, and a rescue boat was supposed to come and pick them up. And all of a sudden, the rescue boat gets orders to turn around. And all of a sudden, they lose communication. So they have no idea why the boat turned around and why there's no communication. And so it pretty much is then a puzzle, at least through the first act, until you discover more in the second.
That's a very good way to go about doing that.
Indeed. We're speaking with playwright Mark St. Germain, who is behind this play that is currently up at the Chester Theater in Chester, Amchitka. And we're also speaking with the managing director of Chester Theater, Hannah Williams.
Before we get more into my more in-depth questions about this particular play with Mark, talk about Amchitka's place in this season for Chester Theater.
Chester is a really, really special theater. We have, you mentioned the talkbacks briefly, and we have cultivated this relationship with our audience base where we are able to program plays broadly with the intention of sparking conversation. So we have a lot of freedom in how we program to get really specific or curious around what sorts of themes do we want to talk about, specifically what do we want our communities to talk about. So we started this season with a sort of scientific exploration of the universe and how we can build sustainability. Our second production was about civil rights activist and Democratic Convention member Fannie Lou Hamer, who really pushed a lot for Black people to get the right to vote in this country. This piece is a world premiere about a nuclear testing site and a mystery. And our next play sends you off, or will be sending you off. It's written by Liz Duffy Adams, who is another local playwright. She's in Northampton. But it kind of sends you off with questions around what is humanity and how are your problems objectively? What really is important? Overarchingly, the entire season kind of has landed in this place of asking questions around who are we and do we have the power to change the future? And if we do, and if we believe that we do, what sort of collective gathering is what we need to make that happen?
How does working at Chester Theater for their season compare to your previous work with Williamstown Theater Festival?
Yeah, Chester Theater has such a strong connection to the town itself, which is really, really special. As we mentioned, we perform in the town hall, the Chester Town Hall Theater, in the auditorium there. And we've, from our founding, had a really close relationship to the town, the Historical Society, the Chester Railway Museum and train station. So there's this really connected feeling to where we are and the town and the people. That's just really, really special.
That's Hannah Williams, who is the managing director of Chester Theater. We're also speaking with the playwright behind the play that is at Chester Theater right now, Mark St. Germain, who's written Chitka.
I'm going to ask you cagey questions about the second act.
I hope they're cagey.
I don't want to
want to give away too much.
Exactly. But there is this really interesting moment where a binary is talked about, a binary of sexes and a binary of kind of stations that people have to be in, while simultaneously suggesting that not having that binary and being broader about it would be better and more conducive to a more humane society. And yet, this play has only 3 characters. So can you talk about that binary choice?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. If you're talking about the sexuality of the characters or the possibility of future sexuality, the play kind of looks at Earth from a couple points of view. And the play toward the very end of it proposes there's another alternative. And that is something, I'm sure, for the far future.
Somebody asked this question, and it was a question that I had as well, but now I get to ask the playwright. I was wondering if you made any changes to the end over the course of writing this, because it was brought up that it took you 2 years to make this play. Having seen the end, I wondered if that was the first version of it.
The ending changed a few times, depending on how optimistic I was that day. And so we ended up at an ending that I think most people will see as hopeful, though there were some people who look at what happens at the end as an event that was a bad outcome for everybody. But I think most of the audience thinks that there's a positive outcome, that there's some redemption and salvation.
Mark, when we were talking in the intro about all the things that you've worked with, you've written for television, you've written for As the World Turns, which some people may scoff at, but my dear friend Len Berkman, the theater professor at Smith College, will be the first to tell you that soap operas are where it's at when it comes to the real high drama. But you've also done, documentaries with Richard Gere and Glenn Close. What brings you back to this tiny little theater that is ensconced in a tiny little community in tiny little Western Mass at the Chester Theater?
Well, theater has always been my first love, and I never stopped doing that. And I did television and film to raise my family, and I had some nice experiences. But there's no experience like working in theater, because for a writer, you have the most control over it. You certainly don't have it in television. You write, and then it goes through a variety of people before it gets on the screen. With film, you have less, because once you sell the screenplay, it's really out of your hands, so anybody can do anything with it. With theater, you're involved with the casting, you're involved with picking the director. And working at Chester was wonderful last year with the Magdalene play. It was a beautiful production. Physically, the actors were wonderful. And Chester is very unique in the atmosphere. Everybody really pulls together, and it's really a family situation, it seems to me. And I would definitely work there again. It's a wonderful place to work.
Speaking about just that theater and this design itself, the set for this is impressive. Can you describe a bit about what this one-room play basically has going on? Because there's so many bells and whistles that are involved on that stage.
Hannah Williams, managing director of Chester Theater.
Yeah, we love this set. Oh my goodness, this is the largest set we've ever had, or the most complicated set. Important to note, when I say we're in the town hall, we bring in the risers and a light rail, and we really take it over, in a sense, to become a theater. I mean, it is artistically on par with what you would see other places in the region. And this set in particular, because they're in the facility that they're in, has a lot of bells and whistles and things that light up. And there are a lot of buttons in the set itself that if you push them, they do respond. Yeah. Whether that's done practically or by someone in the booth, we have a really, really incredible design team on this one. Brian Prather's our set designer out of Hartford. Pocket Scenic Studios helps build all of our sets and bring them in. Laura Dubin is our lighting designer. Raphael Hendrick Baker is the sound designer for this one. And the three of them really working closely with Mark and Julie Boyd, who directed this, to bring all these elements together, overseen by our incredible intern program. We have a massive, wonderful team of interns that we bring in every summer. Incredible stage manager and Jeff Myers, and our absolutely incomparable production team, which is two people, Carly Neiman and Greg Wilson. The whole team was so specific about the details. There was so much discussion dramaturgically around what sort of radio can we have? And if we press this button this way, is it going, how should it respond? What would actually be on the screen? If you open the airlock door to leave the room, how does that sound different than if you're coming into the room through an airlock?
Mark, I had a question for you, content-wise, about the connections that you have between loneliness and care. Every character in this play is lonely in their own ways, and yet they're having these conversations about caretaking, not just of each other, but of the planet. I'm not sure if I want to ask if you learned more of your own perspective on caretaking, or what conclusions you came to about care through creating this piece.
Well, you're right. It says in the play you have three people in this very tiny room for a certain amount of time before they're sent back to the main coast of Alaska. And yet they all have their own problems. And especially two of them don't reach out to each other. But I think what one of the characters says, you have billions of people on the earth and every one of them knows loneliness. And I think everybody does. The play took an awful lot of research. Probably took more time researching than it did to write the play, because I'm not a scientist and I wanted to get a global perspective on a lot of things. And that took a lot. And I learned an awful lot through it.
The play is Chitka. It is at Chester Theater right now. It's going to be running through August 8th. We're speaking with the playwright Mark St. Germain behind the play. And you said you did a lot of research in response to this actual event that happened at Chitka, I believe, yes, based on a true story. I've talked to people now that come from a more progressive background that have in some ways changed their tune about the nuclear industry and whether or not nuclear is something as at least an energy source that we should be pursuing more than we are now because of the lessened impact on greenhouse gas emissions, despite the fact that it is an extremely dangerous way to boil water. Has your perspective on the nuclear industry changed throughout the research of this play, Mark? Or what is your take on the ability for humans to split the atom?
Well, it was a mixed blessing, certainly. And we have the capacity now to blow the world up many times, not just once or twice. We went from the missiles tested to the nuclear devices on Chitka were 250 times stronger than were used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And yet we still have this nuclear buildup through the world, even though we have enough weapons to already destroy it. That is really, I think, one of the focuses of the play.
We got to hear about changing the line on fascism for this, which during our talk back, which I think is important and poignant.
What do you mean by changing the line on fascism? Did he write a line that had fascism in it and changed it?
Yeah.
The line is there. And one character mentions that since the Revolutionary War, there have been 117 conflicts in America. And one of the characters states that we've evolved as a democracy, but we are drifting toward fascism. And that's a real danger. And that's one of the reasons the world is in the shape it is now and the danger it is now.
Can you talk about the way, especially in this play, that it's shown or implied that power impedes listening ability?
We need to have ears open and empathy for other people. And we don't seem to have it. Speech making is one-sided. There's no true communication. one of the things they point out in the play is that there were already warnings about so many events that took place in this world, including the Titanic, and that icebergs, they got messages about them, they ignored it. There were messages warning about Pearl Harbor. There were messages about the World Trade Center. And somehow there was no communication because people didn't listen to each other. And personally, that's what comes through in the play. And I do think we all need the capacity to listen, and we all don't do it enough. We're more interested in talking.
Chester Theater does a thing that I think is really neat that I wasn't aware of before going to see a show there. And you do theater tours where you take folks from your audience and you take them to another city to see the theater that's happening there. And then you talk about it like it's an intentional discussion group that kind of travels together. Can you talk about where you're going this year and, if you know, how that program came about?
So we're going to Chicago this fall. We went to Chicago last year. Our spring tour is typically a London tour. I mean, who doesn't love the London theater scene, truly? It's so interesting to see how just culturally and administratively, really, things are operating in another leading theatrical city in a different country. But we were talking and planning for the fall of, should we change it? Should we go back? And we have two artistic directors, Michelle Ong-Kendrick and Chris Baker. And Chris is from Chicago, so he's a little attached there. He said they've got good theater. And I was in the Midwest for a few years, just a little south of Chicago. So I have a special place in my heart there as well. And we said, we think we got to go back there. The Chicago's theater scene is able to, on the whole, do some things that push some different conversational envelopes, I feel. You know, their storefront theater scene alone is so on the fringes in really active, connected, bleeding heart sorts of ways where you can just feel that these are people who have lived these experiences and want to tell these stories. And I think the professional scene in Chicago really builds up from there in a lot of ways. I don't recall exactly how the tours started. I wish I had that information front of mind right now. But if I had to venture a guess, I would think it comes out of our usual talkbacks. We are very fortunate to have the audience space we do in Chester because they do treat the theater as the gem of the Valley as well. Where a lot of our longtime patrons who've been there all 37 years treat it as their best kept secret kind of thing. They don't want everybody else to know that Chester Theater is there because they know I'm going to go every single Thursday matinee, and I know these four of my friends are always going to be there. And we're always going to have a talk back, and we're going to talk about how does this play affect our lives. It's not going to be a talk back that's how did you decide what costumes to wear or how did you memorize those lines. Like, it's going to be really applicable to who we are and how we want to keep living and connecting with each other. So if I had to guess, I would think it came out of that in some ways, and we wanted to extend our talkbacks because there's great theater anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. I mean, people have been telling stories as long as since before people figured out how to communicate verbally or with what we would consider language now, I suppose. We've always been communicating and sharing information. So we want to look at how are different areas doing that? What is other work coming out of different regions and different leading cities in this industry? And how is that different than what you see in Chester? How is it not? And how can you continue applying these thoughts and conversations to your lives with what you see anyway?
Mark St. Germain is the playwright of Amchitka, which is having its premiere at the Chester Theater in Western Massachusetts, tucked into the hill towns, that beautiful, as I mentioned, gem of the valley.
The last stop in Hamden before you hit Berkshire's.
Yes, it is the penultimate play of Chester Theater's season this year, and we've been joined by Mark St. Germain, as well as the managing director of the Chester Theater, Hannah Williams. Amchitka will run through August 8th at Chester Town Hall Theater. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It was such a fun show. And Chester Theater is an underwriter of NEPM, but that's not why we talked to them. We talked to them because this play is really cool.
In the one of the instances of acting that I've done, the rare instances as of late, one of them was at Chester Theater.
That theater is so neat, and it's so much bigger. It's not the space I was envisioning, because I had never been. This was my first time going to see a production at Chester Theater, was seeing Mchika. And yeah, the space was wonderful, and just not what I was expecting the town hall to be at all. But like the rest of the space that isn't the theater is very much the town hall.
When I did it, it was with a production called Gem of the Valley, which was a celebration of the town itself.
That's
and
hilarious.
It happened all over the little town of Chester, including the town hall. But my particular scene was in the basement of the town hall.
Were you a ghost?
Everything that happens with Egg Tooth Productions and John Bechtold is a little ghosty, so I guess I was a ghost of some sort. But we were in the senior center, and there was a bookshelf there. And on the bookshelf was a Harlequin romance novel called One Night, So Pregnant. And I do now admit, I stole that book from the senior center, and it is now on my bookshelves at home.
I don't think anybody's actually looking for that one.
Sometimes I do dramatic readings from it.
Oh my
still.
gosh. Wow, that's impressive on a lot of levels. But on the next Fabulous 413, we're going to talk with folks from Midwifery Exchange in Ghana about their upcoming fundraiser this Saturday at First Church's Bring On the Jollof.
We'll also head back to the birthplace of the wine Thunderdome at State Street to pit two Alsatian Gentiles against each other.
Gentiles. And Live Music Friday brings Gina Coleman, who you're hearing right now, of Misty Blues, back to the show for a performance and preview of the Williamstown Blues Festival. I'm Clee Smith.
I'm Monty Belmonte. We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.